Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors, the place where we not only talk about what's going on in the gun world, our beautiful country, how we're going to fix this bad boy together. Guys, we have got to talk about something that happened at the Supreme Court last night. So while we were dealing with the backlash from all the other stuff we've been talking about, the Supreme Court came out with an 8-1 decision basically saying that the Trump administration can completely gut any federal bureaucracy as much as they frickin' want to. And it includes the ATF. Guys, this is a pretty big one. We're going to touch on that. We're going to touch on the DEA and the merger because that's not going to happen, not at least in the way that you think it's going to. And of course, everything will be linked in the description box below. I cannot wait to hear what you guys think. And of course, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on because we are pushing towards freedom every single day. And thank you in advance for doing just that. Now, follow me at Braden LOA on X so we can expound the message even further, which includes the second press, which you are seeing the banner up there. Now, this is our community. This is our network. This is our movement that we are forming together. We're going to go after the left with reckless abandon. We're going to go after them in the written word through letters and articles that I'm going to be writing through AMOLAN coming up. You've got the live streams. You've got the long forms. You've got the shorts. You've got the podcast. You got Katie's shorts. You got merch. And you have the overall technological advantage of the creation of which we are unleashing on a daily basis. Guys, if there's been something that you join and you support to fully take it to the left, this is it. The secondpress.co, we are going to take no prisoners. There's a link in the description box below, and I invite you to jump in here and take part in this because it is going to be biblical. All right, enough of that. Let's get into what is going on because I owe you guys this story. All right, now, y'all will know that when I reference lefties on X and lefty congresswomen, even the far lefty ones, like the far left socialist members of the squad, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, there's a good reason. Here's the setup. This illegitimate SCOTUS continues to do Trump's bidding, allowing him to take a wrecking ball to federal agencies and fire thousands of federal workers who provide the services our families rely on. We need to end this court's corrupt grip on our democracy. Now, I'm going to show you the CNN article which she's referencing, but it's an important thing to note. When you look at far left populist, which the other word for that is socialist or communist, or in this case, theocratic supporters, you're talking about an overall contingency and an overall dependence of the left on federal state programs, employees. The more people that are in the federal state, the federal employment, the bigger the government grows. Therefore, it's the driver of the economy and the force of the economy. So basically, you can't rip it out because big government's the solution, right? Socialism 101. But anyway, let me get into this because Mike Lee said something interesting. You know how she said that it was the SCOTUS having a grip that was unconscionable on the population? Yeah, it was an 8-1 decision, says Mike Lee. 8-1. That means 2 out of the 3 liberal justices agreed. Now, of course, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the one who's kind of getting couched as the dunce in the corner, is not getting any love, but she didn't do it. All right, here's the thing. ATF, DEA, all of those organizations are bureaucratic entities underneath the president, the executive branch. Okay? The reason that this is really important is because when Trump came in and said, we're going to gut executive bureaucracy A, let's say it's the ATF, the left decided to judge shop and say, you can't do that to the federal bureaucracies. We need to have every single employee and continue spending all the money that we can because big government is better. Well, the SCOTUS just came in and said, hey, you guys can't do that anymore. So effectively, the ATF cuts, the DEA cuts, the FBI cuts, the VA cuts, all the cuts are now back on the table. And this is something that I want to elaborate a little further on because it is impossible for the executive branch, hear me, it is impossible to have that branch, the executive, the president, the administration, merge the ATF and the DEA. It cannot be done. I've shown you multiple videos on congress.gov, all the receipts. I'm not going to do that right now. You can find those videos. They're everywhere. But the fact is, Congress is the only body and entity that can do that. They created the organization. They're the only ones that can destroy them. However, the executive branch has the ability to reorganize, minimize, maximize, do all those different pieces. They can't destroy, but they sure as hell can reorganize or fire. All right. That's the important backstory here. Again, I'd like to reemphasize all the energy around the ATF and the DEA making this super agency. It's not going to happen. It's going to be something else. We've elaborated on it. That's for another video. CNN. Supreme Court backs Trump's effort to dramatically reshape federal government for now. The Supreme Court on Tuesday backed President Donald Trump's effort to carry out mass firings and reorganizations at federal agencies, putting on hold a lower court order that had temporarily blocked the president from taking those steps without approval from Congress. Again, this is ATF, FBI, DEA, this is all of them. Okay? In an unsigned order, the High Court said that lower courts had stopped the plans based on the administration's general effort, rather than specific agency, quote, reduction in force plans that would drastically cut the size of the government workforce. Now, reduction in force, you're talking about firing and minimizing. That's what you're talking about right there. But the left didn't want to do that. They didn't want the power brokers at the bureaucracies that ran through a shadow government effectively to go away, because then they don't have their power base. Again, it can now be allowed. The left doesn't like it, but SCOTUS said it. The case stems from an executive order Trump signed in mid-February that kicked off the process of significantly reducing the size of federal agencies, an issue the president campaigned on last year. Departments subsequently announced plans to lay off tens of thousands of employees, but federal departments are created by law, and lower courts have repeatedly held that the White House cannot unilaterally wipe them out or leave them so short-staffed they cannot carry out their legal responsibilities. It's the same concept of what I was just telling you. They cannot destroy them from the executive branch, but they can fire a lot of people because they serve at the pleasure of the president underneath the executive branch. That's the important part of this SCOTUS ruling from 8-1 in our world. ATF, you can minimize that. ATF, DEA, not going to happen. DEA, FBI, VA, CDC, all these organizations are fully in the purview of the executive branch to minimize them. You can't destroy them or merge them, but you can minimize them. All right, let's continue here. Because the government is likely to succeed on its argument that the executive order and memorandum are lawful, we grant the application, the court wrote in its brief order. We express no view on the legality of any agency RIF and reorganization plan produced or approved pursuant to the executive order and memorandum. Again, what this entire thing was, this is the limited scope of this. It's not like Trump put forward and said, hey, we're going to cut the ATF by 50%, and then they sued them. What they said was, we're going to cut federal bureaucracies, and all the bureaucracies said, okay, let's do it, and then they got put on hold temporarily. Not anymore. You're about to see a shrinking of the bureaucratic state, which I'm totally down for, by the way. I'm not a fan of ruling through bureaucracy. I hate that crap. They're not elected, they're not accountable, and they stay there forever. It's like recipe for Deep State 101. Anyway, quote, today's decision has dealt a serious blow to our democracy and put services that the American people rely on in grave jeopardy, the coalition said in a statement. This decision does not change the simple and clear fact that reorganizing government functions and laying off federal workers en masse haphazardly without any congressional approval is not allowed by our Constitution. Completely incorrect. The SCOTUS just told them they were incorrect. The president cannot delete them and cannot merge them. ATF DEA touch right there. They can't do it, but they can take employees away, minimize or maximize. Now, let's finish this out because this is a very important piece to all of this to give you a scope of the impact. Some of the proposed cuts include a reduction of some 10,000 positions at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the Food and Drug Administration, and the National Institutes of Health, according to court records. The Treasury Department proposed reducing the number of IRS positions by 40%. Woo! The Department of Veteran Affairs planned to eliminate 80,000 jobs, wait for it, according to the groups that sued, though on Monday the VA reduced that figure to 30,000, which it said will be accomplished mainly through a hiring freeze, deferred resignations, retirements, and normal attrition. That blows the entire talking point out of the water. They're going to reduce the size of the bureaucracy, all right, but they're not going to go about and just fire all the random people. They're going to do it through retirements, normal attrition, and a hiring freeze. That's the same thing corporations do. That's not firing 30,000 people who are working at the VA. That's just not rehiring them as they leave. That's how you do that with as minimal impact as possible. But the left is going down the road of they're going to cancel all the services. That's not what this is. So those 40% reductions at the ATF that they put out in their new budgets, it's going to happen through retirements, attrition, and hiring freezes. That's why it's all happening the way that it is that you saw in the budget. But again, it's not about common sense and rationality. It's about emotionally stirring anger. Continue though. The heads of some agencies have said that they are holding off their reorganizations and reductions because of the district court order, which just got overturned. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, a member of the court's liberal wing, said she agreed with the decision, which she described as limited. Quote, I agree with Justice Jackson that the president cannot restructure federal agencies in a manner inconsistent with congressional mandates, which I just told you what those were. Sotomayor wrote, here, however, the relevant executive order directs agencies to plan reorganizations and reductions in force consistent with applicable law. The SCOTUS is literally saying you just have to follow the laws. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. But here you have the left openly and overtly lying about what they're talking about. It's about stirring emotion. It's about creating energy to get people out there and riled up and all psychopathic because of lies. The left is lying. And I just walked you through the entire thing. But you guys will be the arbiters of truth. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Everything is linked, and I will see you on the next one. I'm Braden. See you later.